I use 2 knives for the entire process. I don't normally use this knife, but I couldn't find my caper after the move, and that's normally what I use, is a nice caping knife. It has a similar shape to it. I use this to get into the muscles. I use this to clean off all this white sinew. I literally fillet it off, and I'll show you that later. So these are the 2 knives I use. Again, I'm going to start with this football piece. This is the sirloin tip, and I'm using these lines that are laid out here with fat. I literally just cut in, stick my finger in. You can see how the muscle already begins to separate. I just run along the line, and it just starts coming apart beautifully. And so this is a shroud over the entire thing. Again, following the line. You're just going to cut in, and you see how the muscle opens up, and you're going to separate each of the muscle groups within the rump. Just keep following the lines. It's just like coloring. So now you see that sirloin tip popping out, come down here. And then you've got the rump roast. The bone is right here. This bone goes right back. This muscle rolls around the bone. So you're going to cut it off the bone. So I'm going to use the bone up under there as my guide, which will be the process for every muscle group. You see the bone right here. Now I'm going to cut down right on the bone and take off this entire muscle group. You can peel it, just peel it back, separate it, and just keep cutting it back just like that. There again, here's the fat line to cut on. Peel this back until you get the whole muscle separating. And there's a couple in here that I like to keep separate. Cut out this whole fat thing so you can see what's going on. I just keep a colander in the sink to catch all the waste. All right, so I'm going to keep this. This is what I call a rump tender. It's just a real thin piece of meat. It's attached to a rump roast. There's another rump roast here. So, cut right back up to the bone. Capture some of this meat, go around the bone. And then I'm going to release all of this from the bone and start working them as individual muscles. So I'm going to take off this rump tender, as I call it. I don't even really know what the real word of it, the real name of that muscle is. I'm going to just separate these two, and I'll come back in a bit and clean those up and separate them. I'm going to set them aside for right now and work on this thing I call the football. So come down here and separate the football. Cut all these tendons. It's like a kneecap that you have to cut around. And this knife is not my regular knife, and it does not have the oomph to do it. It really doesn't. Knives matter. A good knife makes your job so much easier. And so I'm struggling a lot with this little cheap paring knife from China. It's just not holding an edge. I just had it razor sharp, literally shaving my arm with it, and now I can barely get it to cut the meat just after that little bit. There's a kneecap right here that I'm having to cut around. Again, letting the bone be my guide. Bone is right here. I'm going to cut that off. So anyway, I'm going to get down right along the bone. So get my hand in there, and I can just grab the bone, pull on it, cut right down it, saving as much meat as possible until that bone comes loose. This will be the top sirloin here, I'm pretty sure. The bottom sirloin is on the opposite side. So this bottom, top sirloin, sirloin tip. I think that's correct. These are just rump roasts. And again, I just stay between the fascia, which is the muscle lining between the muscles. Try to just separate them out best I can. And I'll just come back and rework them all. People talk about all the hair on these things. I don't worry about the hair because when I get done, it'll be raw meat and nothing to it. So I'm setting that aside. There's another big rump, and then this has a, this is where that shroud covers the entire piece. So I just kind of just peel it back until I can see that entire rump roast muscle underneath. You can see how this is peeling back and revealing a beautiful piece of meat. I make hamburger out of this top piece here. Get that off. There you go. So I'll clean this up in a bit. I separate these two. This is another nice little piece of meat. I separate this out for chunks. This one I'll make a roast or smoke it. Sometimes we cut it up in chunks and wrap it in bacon and barbecue it. So I separate these out. This piece has a big blood vein and artery runs through it. It separates out pretty easy. It's hard to see the joint here. And then it has a blood vein right there that I always cut out. It goes right through the piece of the meat. Try to save it, cutting down to the vein and around it because it's got a bloody taste. Pull that out. If you can save some of the meat, do. Put it in your hamburger. This meat is freezing cold. My fingers are already numb. So I just toss stuff like this. I mean, I could work all day getting these one bites and little chunks of meat, but I'll throw this in a bucket for hamburger. That's easy to get. This I would call a chunk. Clean up this little sinew edge. Typically we use my fillet knife for that unless it peels off, but I know that that sinew is really easy to peel off here. Deal with that in a bit, clean it up for hamburger, and then get the sinew off right here. This white comes off real easy. You can just scrape on it. This is what takes the time, but this is why you don't throw it away too, because it tastes good. Because that does not taste good. This does not taste good. So that's what I do to clean it up. So I will wash this now. Just run water again. This is going into a colander in the bottom of the sink over my disposal, so I don't have to worry too much about overage and overrun. So once I am finished, you'll see what I'm talking about. This was exposed meat. This is where you would have cut the hams apart when you were cleaning the deer in the field. You can see how clean it is. No hair, no nothing on it. Just comes out beautiful meat. Goes into the pot as chunks. That's what I call it. So we just keep doing this. I typically am going to use a fillet knife that's super sharp and take this off, and I lose a little meat, but I also lose gaminess by just peeling this right off like that. And you gotta just work at this a while. You kind of pull it tight and pull down on it. It's not much meat that you're cutting away there. You just keep the piece you want out, kind of the humped up portion. Cut through till you hit the table. And then I'll show you another technique real quick to clean sinew off. So I just toss all that in my colander. It's waste. So there's also a whole line of sinew on this side and that side that I don't want. Here's a technique that I developed just to clean it myself. I put it up near the edge of the board over here and just cut in with my fillet knife. This takes some practice. This is just like filleting a fish. I get as close to the board as possible, get downward pressure on the meat, and I'm literally slicing off the sinew on the bottom. trying to keep my cut as thin as possible, always less than an eighth of an inch if possible. And if I get too much, I'll come back and fillet it off that sinew. So here's what you get. So I peeled off, you get a nice beautiful piece of meat, and you see how thin this is. There's a little waste there, but if you, it's just not worth the bad taste. So this is what you're eliminating, all this slime, which is impossible to peel off. So I fillet it off. I end up with a little bit of waste. I could come back if I wanted to and refillet that and save my meat, so I can put that in and save it, but you see how much I'm getting off. It's not worth it. So if you get good at doing this fillet to get the sinew off, I mean, you're talking a waste of a ½ inch square of meat. So anyway, it's better than throwing the whole ham away because you can't stand the taste, the gaminess. And I'll come back a little bit and clean up where I didn't get it all. And I am anal about it. I would say I'm not anal about it, but I am. So I'm going to take off everything that is not beautiful red meat within reason. You learn how to just use this fillet knife, take super thin cuts to get that fascia and all the slimy connecting mucousy membrane off the muscle. You get good at it, end up with a roast that looks like this. Has very little of anything on it except just raw meat. Okay, we didn't get this one. I didn't do this side. I'll try it this way so you can see. This is what's happening underneath when I do it. It's easier to do with downward pressure on the board. I'll show you, this is what I'm doing, is just cleaning that slime off the meat. Feed it to your dogs. It's a good other thing to do. You see how I'm humping it up? You can peel it back pretty easily that way too. This is a technique that I'd use on every muscle. Both of these techniques. Just keep pushing it off until you get down to nothing but meat. Yes, it takes forever. You want to eat clean, good meat that no one knows is deer? I'm telling you, this is the way to do it. People eat my deer meat all the time and we forget, and we tell them halfway through dinner. Oh, forgot to tell you, this is venison. What? They've been saying the whole meal, 3/4 of the way through it. This is so good. Tell them it's deer and they push it away from you. Oh well, or for me. One last little sprick here. Clean off. Don't have to do this. Probably get by with it. Enough seasoning and soup, but there you go. That's what I strive for right there on every muscle. So that's pretty much how you do each of these muscles that I just separated. All right, hope you enjoyed that.